Members, we've formed a quorum. Let's get started with the meeting. Okay, thank you. Members, item 1, confirmation of minutes. Paper number CB bracket 4121111/1617, minutes of meeting held on 21st of April. I have not received any proposed amendments before the meeting. Any proposed amendments now? If not, then let's confirm the minutes. No objection, thank you. Item 2, information papers issued since the last regular meeting on the 15th of May. 3 papers altogether. First one, LC paper number CB bracket 41045/1617 bracket 01. Letter from Mr. Jeremy Tam on the disposal of flight mileage awards earned by public officers from duty travels. And the administration's response is in CB bracket 41045/1617 bracket 02. That's the administration's response. And then another paper, CB 41238/17 bracket 01. That is a letter from Mrs. Regina Yip on the shortage of manpower in the occupational safety officer grade of the Labour Department. The letter was dated the 12th of June, and she suggested that we should discuss this item in our meeting, and that should be made part of the list of outstanding items. Mrs. Yip, for the safety officer, occupational safety officers, they have complained to me that they are short-handed all the time. 9 people have died in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge project. I'm sure you are concerned about this as well. So can we ask the Labour Department to come earlier to give us a response? Yes. Mrs. Yip, can I invite the secretary to come in to give you a direct response? Shall we invite the administration team from the CSB to join us? I think we are talking about human lives here. So let's put pressure on them together. Let's talk to them face to face.
Okay.
Thank you, Secretary. Before you joined us, Mrs. Regina has submitted a letter expressing her concern about the shortage of manpower in the occupational safety officer grade of the Labour Department. Mrs. Yip was asking whether in the next meeting we can add in this item on top of the 2 proposed, because they're very concerned about whether there is enough manpower to patrol our infrastructure projects. Can that be included? Can you prepare a paper so that we can discuss it at the next meeting? There are so many industrial accidents. 9 people died in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge project. I heard when I was outside, and I've read through your letter, and I think I share Mrs. Yip's views too. Recently, I visited the Labour Department, and this is something that I have discussed with the Labour Department also, and we more or less touched on the same points. And actually, we have got more people. It's not just 11 posts. We've checked them. We've checked on them. In the past 4 to 5 years, from 2012 to 17, we have created 44 posts. But that doesn't mean that the workload has come down. There are 2 points here. In the past year, there have been serious industrial accidents, and the investigation takes more time. And for public infrastructure projects and also housing projects of the private property developers, so they have a more onerous workload now. And they have talked to me about how they will deal with that situation given the existing manpower. Say they would take a risk-based approach. But anyway, manpower constraint remains a problem, so this is something that we should discuss. Second, in terms of timing, after the visit, we followed up. We are getting information from the Labor Department on the actual problems they are facing. For example, in the recruitment of this grade, are there any difficulties encountered? Of course, we could strive for more resources for them. But then if they could not recruit enough people, they could not retain people, then that has to be something to be factored into as well. So let's do with it this way. Let's first take a look at the Labor Department's data first. And then maybe we will submit a paper to the PSP first. And I must tell Mrs. Yip that this is something that we're already working on internally, and the staff unions and also the Labor Department are well aware of this. So let's take a look at the information first before we decide on which meeting to deal with this and have a full discussion on this. All right. Whether it's Mrs. Yip and myself, I think the best way forward is to have it discussed in the next meeting. However, if for one reason or another that cannot be done, maybe we should discuss it the first thing when we come back in the next legislative session. Chairman, as I said, what matters most is we should have the cooperation from the Labor Department and also the LWB. We should try to get as much information as possible first, but I can assure members that we are very clear about the subject, and the workers have directly talked to us. So whether it's going to be discussed within this year or the next year, I believe that during the summer vacation, if it is at all possible, we'll try to strive for more resources for the department. Thank you, Mrs. Yip. Any other member? Any other views? If not, then let's move on to the next item. Dr. M. Zhang. Well, since the Secretary is here, the Secretary response on the flight mileage awards earned by civil servants or public officers. Your response is in the last paragraph, and that is if before they leave, they still have a certain flight mileage awards earned, the department head can, based on the prescribed principles, to consider how to deal with the mileage based on the actual situations, so that the matter can be dealt with properly. Does it mean that when political officers leave their posts, or their flight mileage awards actually will go back to the person involved, and it will be given to them all, right? Yes, that covers also the civil servants. And as we all know, our civil servants at all grades will abide by the same set of guidelines. And I have personal experience myself. It's not that many civil officers will have duty visits all the time. And for the undisposed flight mileage awards, it might not be able, they may not be able to use these awards for duty visits again. And very often, duty visits are planned very urgently, and it's sometimes difficult for these flight mileage awards to be used again in duty visits. Say, for example, for TID, maybe many officers are going overseas to have multilateral negotiation discussions. So it's coming that these flight mileage awards are used for duty visits again. But then for other departments, that's not the case. But then again, it doesn't mean that these mileage awards, flight mileage awards, will be given to the officers for their private use. We have told the various departments on our principles in using such a flight mileage awards for civil servants and also public officers. For myself, for example, I don't have duty visits all the time, so I don't earn the flight mileage awards myself. And some of them have opted to donate these awards to charitable organizations. That can be done. And the greatest consideration is that the public officers have promised that they would not use these as awards for their private use. That's the main principle. And as I said, the guidelines cover all civil servants of all grades, so the scope is rather wide. Secretary, I hope that the government will come up with a consistent set of standards. Because right now you are treating the cases on an individual basis. Can we have a consistent approach? Say all the mileage awards should be handed to the CSB for their handling, because I'm sure that the amount of such awards can be enormous. Maybe you can turn these flight mileage awards into flight tickets, and maybe they can sell these as some sort of prices for charitable coupons and so on. I'm suggesting that you should deal with it centrally. For my department, we have tried to ask certain airlines to open a dedicated account for us so that all our employees can deposit their mileage into that account. Well, they are not willing to do that, so that's not done. Now, the more stringent the standards are, then maybe some of our colleagues say that they would rather not have them. A more practicable solution is that for certain departments which are seeing a lot of officers undertaking duty visits, then maybe we can work on them specially. TID is one example. For other departments, that's not the case. Not many civil servants will have a long-haul flights on a frequent basis. So if we set the system too rigidly, then maybe some of the officers rather than abandon or give up their mileage.
But we can do something, Chairman. We can tell the departments that we have seen some frequent methods such as donating miles to charities, so that when the different departments use their discretion, then they can try to adopt such methods and use those for reference. Thank you. Next agenda item, the date of next meeting and discussion meeting. So you can refer to CB 1215-1617-02, so you will be able to see the list of items. And the next meeting will be July 17th. 9:30 in the morning, and we will be talking about the overview of post-service outside work by Directorate Civil Servants, and secondly, management of stress at workplace in the civil service. So that are the first two items in the list of outstanding items for discussion. So aside from what is mentioned by Ms. Regina Ip, do members have other comments in relation to these outstanding items? If not, then let us endorse it. Thank you. Agenda item number 4. For discussion today, the employment of persons with disabilities in the civil service, paper CB bracket 4, 12, 1 to 15 stroke 16 to 17 bracket 04. May I invite the secretary to take us through the paper? Thank you. We are the largest employer in Hong Kong, and we promote equal opportunities, and we want to ensure that persons with disabilities will be able to compete with able-bodied candidates on equal footing. So I have to emphasize that they would have equal access to job opportunities in the government. Paragraph 5 and 6 states the numbers of employment, and in paragraph 7 and 8 we also showed special internship program for young people and our way forward. So I would like to highlight a few points from the paper. First of all, I'd like to share with you the situation of since we started the internship scheme. There are multi-purposes to this scheme. First of all, we'll be able to identify the job abilities of the students so that they will understand that they are actually compared to able-bodied persons on an equal footing. And secondly, we would also be able to try to explore the potential of persons with disabilities, because some PWDs due to their disabilities actually concentrate more on their jobs. We hope that students who participate in the internship scheme will be able to have some real work experience before going into the workplace formally. And actually, this scheme has been successful towards this end. The departments and bureaus that participated in the scheme mainly were very satisfied with the performance of the students. They felt that they were very satisfied with the attitude and their job potential. You may have heard from the media a visually impaired person with also a deaf, a third-year student, was in charge of editing some work, and his superior was very pleased with his performance and felt that he worked better than other able-bodied persons. And in the students of the Shine Skills Center, we found that they were very skilled in using computer software. They are mostly interested in data input and computer software. When the students graduate, I would meet with them personally and have a 2-hour sharing session with them. The students not only said that they learned useful skills in the internship, they also expressed their happiness in being recognized and accepted as a team. And that was a very strong boost to their morale. They hope that there would be more places for them. Some of them study engineering and some disciplines of vocational training, and after hearing their views, it inspired us to better our scheme this year. We are going to continue our scheme this year, and in para 9 we said that we hope to increase the number of spaces, and we also hope that it would be more practical and to really help them improve their skills. Therefore, we have increased 60% from 20 students to 32 students this year, and they have already started their internship in June. And we would, to our best ability, add in non-administrative duties that are related to their study disciplines. And we hope that for the Shine Skills Center graduates, we would also increase more work duties in relation to computer software. We understand that the policy of recruiting PWDs is very important to all our departments and bureaus. We always emphasize that we have a policy on hiring PWDs, and that there should be accommodation for them. Under certain circumstances, we would invite those from the non-civil sector to share their experiences with them, so that we would have a better idea of what the PWDs would like to learn from the internship. We mainly recruit PWDs to take up clerical positions, and we do try to set a good example for others, so that by recruiting more PWDs into our bureaus and departments, and we want to provide them with the best post suitable for them, and we would provide them with at the workplace support and in supporting equipment. We have already spent around $1 million, $5.2 million in 1996 to support the PWDs. We hope that each civil servant would be able to adapt to their working environment, and we do want to realize their full potential and to provide better service for the general public. Thank you. All right, it is now time for questions. 5 minutes each. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. Well, you said that the government should set a good example and to encourage other employers to provide equal opportunities to PWDs. I'd like to try to have a better understanding of certain numbers. Well, as you know, as you said just now, there are 3,200 PWDs hired in the civil service. So do these include non-contract NSCLs? You said that last time there are 20 students in the internship scheme, and then upcoming there would be 32 students. So you believe that this scheme is positive and very helpful to the students. So would they have a better opportunity in being hired as a civil servant after the internship scheme? And do you provide any remuneration for them in the internship scheme? You are increasing the number by 12 this year. Can you actually add in more spaces, and how much money are you actually using? NCSC staff in the PWDs, I don't have the number right now, but I think that it's not a large number, because for NCSC a total number we only hired 12,000. Well, I think if I look at the percentage, it would be around 100 to 100. It wouldn't be too many. My colleague just told me that as of March 31st of last year, there was 162 NCSC staff who are PWDs. You asked about our follow-up arrangements. Civil servants are recruited through public recruitment, and we would provide equal opportunities for them. But for those who participated in the internship scheme, there's actually huge benefit to them, because they have worked in the bureaus and departments before, and they have experience. As we do not have too many of these staff, usually the bureaus and departments would remember them, and actually when they complete the internship scheme, we would issue them a certificate signed by us. And so when they apply for a civil service post, I'm sure that they would also supplement this certificate as additional information. I'm not saying that it is a huge benefit or huge advantage, but it would of course be useful. And we do try to follow up on the career of these students. We found that many of these students who completed the internship last year found jobs, though not necessarily with the government.
Well, for university students, we have a sum of $9,600. Why that amount? We are taking reference from the pay for internship for able-bodied university students. And for China Skills Center students, the amount given to them is $8,100 last year for 8 weeks, and this year is $8,500. There is no particular indicator on which we draw up this amount, but we've talked to the center, which finds it to be an acceptable pay level. So they are given indeed pay for their work. So as to whether we can further expand this scheme, yes, that can be done, and the amount involved is not large either. Of course, it would be good if we can expand the scheme. But as a next step, I think, as set out in the paper, towards the end of the paper, we hope that the government can lead by example. And we can do some concrete work. And in paragraph 10, we said that we hope that the internship scheme could be expanded. We should explore the scope for other organizations to take on the scheme. Now, the civil servants take up 4% of the entire workforce in Hong Kong. As a next step, we should extend the scheme to cover private organizations, public bodies as well, so that there will be more job opportunities for PWD students. There should be more job types made available for them so that they can get a better or more useful work experience. Mr. Jeremy Tam, Vice Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. For such schemes for PWDs where they can get internship opportunities, I fully support it, and I'd like to thank the Bureau for their hard work. I hope that you can continue and keep up your good work. Try to extend the scheme to other government departments. Now, my first question, you said that in 2016, 43 students joined the scheme. In paragraph 9, you said that the number of placements has been increased from 20 to 32. Well, what about the application number? How many people are applying? I would like to know the difference, actually, the number of applications versus the number of placements. That's my first question. At this stage, well, actually, this is the second year that we are trying this out. We didn't want to be too ambitious in the first year, so in drawing up the number of placements, we discussed with the universities and VTC, and these are the numbers suggested by them. My understanding that is in the initial stage of the program, the VTC and the universities will do their own invitation. They will say first conduct an assessment, and then they will try to give us the right people. It's not we don't go by an application mechanism, but of course, going forward, if the number of placement has been expanded to a large size, then we can have open applications. But I think for safety purpose now, I think it's best if they can, if these are referred to us by the organizations, because there are so many different types of disabilities and not that many job types are suitable for taking up by PWDs. So it would be best if they can refer the candidates to us. I think you should act with conscience. I don't think you should be afraid of being too ambitious here. I think it would be best if you are open to applications by people. I think it works better than the nomination. I know that you did it last year for the first time, so I understand why you did what you did. But then if we're talking about equal job opportunities, we should, open up the placement for applications by everyone. I don't want to hear complaints say that people would say that I'm familiar with this officer, so I get the job. No, I don't want to hear that kind of complaint. So going forward, I hope that you can have open invitation and open and applications by everyone. And also you have to look at the number of applications versus the number of placements, and maybe you can step by step provide more placements each year. Now, you talk about $8,000 for 8 weeks. So this is the amount for the entire 8-week period, is that right? How does that compare to other interns? Are we talking a pay higher or lower? Because different government departments have other internship schemes. So how is the comparison like? And apart from that subsidy amount, do you have any other allowance, say travel allowance, meal allowance, etc.? Are there any other types of assistance? Secretary. Vice Chairman, when I had sharing with some students, well, one student did raise that point, so you know their mindset. So we could possibly provide that kind of assistance. But there are 2 points. It's easier if we work on the students on that in that particular regard. Vice Chairman, you must understand that university students do have the right capability, so a lot of people would like to have that kind of internship. So this is a view raised by the students. They want to have more places and also more different job types. Second, we must have a limit on the number of placements. For the government itself, there is there is a limit as to what we can do. So we try to ask more private organizations and public bodies to join us in providing similar internship schemes. So then if that is done, then it will be easier if we can have open applications. Now, Shine Skill Center has to do with your second question. The learning skills of the students in the center is relatively lower, and they may come with greater disabilities physically. So for this particular group, it may not be appropriate for us to have open applications. It would be better if the center selects the right people for us. Responding to your question, $9,600, it's on a par with the pay for able-bodied university students doing internship in government departments. Now, why a lower amount for the Shine participants, $8,000 or so? And it's because the PWDs of the center may actually have to get off work to receive training in their centers. So compared to the working hours of the university students, they work less hours. So that's why the amount is less. And that was agreed upon with the Shine Skill Center. And if this Shine Skill Center tells us that we have to increase the amount, then we would definitely consider it. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Chairman, I appreciate the Secretary's hard work in the past year, especially in launching the internship scheme. But overall, in terms of civil servants employing PWDs, in terms of the number of people hired, I'm not that happy. Can you give more job opportunities for PWDs? I think the situation is still unsatisfactory. We have brought in 83 new recruits who have declared their own disabilities a record high, but then it takes up only 0.8% of the new recruits of the civil servants, less than 1%. So over the years, we haven't never employed more than 1% of new civil servants with PWDs. Now we have 3,232 civil servants with disabilities, and most of them, when they joined the civil servants, they were not disabled, and as they work in the civil service, they have become disabled. And that's why they are considered disabled civil servants. In the past 5 years or 10 years, we're talking about dozens of new recruits with disabilities. But those who left the civil office, 200 or so. So more people are leaving than coming in. So over the years, you just have 3,000 or so civil servants with disabilities. You said that they take up around 2% of the strength of the civil service. That figure is a bit misleading. If we compare ourselves to what happened in 10 years ago, in 06 07, you had 3,263 civil servants with disabilities, taking up 2.1% of the entire civil service. But now the number has dropped to 1.9%. Well, that back then we have 153,000 civil servants, and now we have 166,000 civil servants. The number of civil servants has increased, but then the number of civil servants with disabilities has dropped. We just have 3,230 today and 3,263 back in 06. So no improvement. I think it's good that you have internship program, but you have to hire them afterwards. Well, you say you have a record high of 83, but that takes up less than 0.1%. How can you hire more? I think you should review the situation. You said that the disabilities, when they join the service, they declared their disabilities on a voluntary basis. And you said that you would give priority to applicants with disabilities found suitable for appointment by placing them ahead of able-bodied applicants. So you should give them clear instructions so that they have the incentive to declare their disability. And you should also expand the internship scheme. You should not just have the scheme for students. You should also provide, you should make available the scheme for students with a degree program and have disabilities. Many PWDs really have received tertiary education, but then in the labor market, they are subject to all sorts of discrimination. So if your internship scheme is available not just for students, but also other PWDs, then that will give you an opportunity to try to understand the PWDs more and their hard efforts, and also give them an opportunity to have internship within the government. So you should also expand the scheme to all government-subvented organizations. I think they do have the responsibility to provide such a scheme. I think what's most practicable, you should come up with an indicator. You should have an indicator. Say you should have an indicator of 2% for new recruits. You can also adopt a 2% indicator or target. You should set this target for both the government and also government-subvented organizations. They should do so. And if they can't do it now, they should have a plan to tell you how they're going to achieve it. And all these plans should be made open and transparent. The government is being very transparent. You give us all the figures. But I think this transparency mechanism should also cover all NGOs as well. Secretary. No, I'm not letting them off, Dr. Zhang. This is a joint responsibility of all, I believe. As the Secretary for Civil Service, I hope that we can do as much as possible within the government, of course, but if we have to expand it to cover the entire labor market, I don't think I can work alone. I have the responsibility, however, to promote this scheme, and we should show people strong evidence that this is a scheme which is practicable. This is a joint responsibility of the society. And within my policy portfolio, what I can do is what we have already done. And we will also take account of Dr. Zhang's views, and we will share them with the LWB. And we should expand the scheme to organizations outside the government, and we can get more assistance in that regard.
We have always been consistent in the number of PWDs we hired, yet there has been no breakthrough. Therefore, we have been trying last year to see if anything could be done. As you can see, the numbers have remained similar for the past years, and I remember that I have been asked many times why some employees do not tell us that they are PWDs when they applied, and many of them do not declare themselves as PWDs when they apply because they were afraid to be discriminated. Therefore, there are two parts to this. First of all, we must let the BDs know that they must notify the PWD applicants that they would get special treatment. For those who declare themselves as PWDs, they could go straight to the interview. And this is very important. For example, when they apply for a clerical position, and as a clerical assistant, we had 26,000 applicants, but this year the number of applicants was 38,000. So you can see that we have a very strict selection process for PWDs who declare themselves through their applications. They will not need to be screened, and they will be able to get an interview opportunity. Therefore, it is a very strong advantage because the number of applicants have increased. I hope that the BDs would also understand that the PWDs abilities should not be queried. Therefore, the BDs can help these PWDs adapt to their environment without pressure, and they can see very clearly that the PWDs can adapt to the work in 2 months or shorter. We have spoken to many of the DB heads, and they have all agreed that in many of the job positions they could accept PWDs. Most important post they can apply for is a clerical assistant and assistant clerical officer. Well, this is the second internship scheme. For those who participated in last year's internship, some of them have not even graduated. We do hope that more participants would apply for the internship, and then after they finish their internship, they could come apply for our full-time positions. Mr. Ho Kai-ming, thank you. The government is willing to recruit PWDs, and we welcome that. But you have to understand that we provide more barrier-free access for the PWDs, and therefore this is quite a good arrangement. But we only have 2% of civil servants as PWDs, and actually there are actually 170,000 age-appropriate who can join the workforce. But we only hire 3,200 PWDs, and that's a very small number. Some BDs have joined the internship scheme, and they may find that there are suitable or appropriate positions for these PWDs. So can you set up some quota for the PWDs so that the PWDs would have more opportunities, and that they would be able to find a job and not to waste their talents at home, because for many of the private enterprises, they may not have all these barrier-free accesses as we do at the government. So I do hope that the government can make better arrangements for the PWDs. Chairman, well, this is, as I said, we are the largest employer, would encourage the recruitment of more PWDs. But as to whether we should adopt a quota system, I think that we have a different concept. I have talked to many of the students with disabilities, and many students do not want a quota. They want to be assessed on equal footing because they felt that they are comparable to able-bodied persons. You may think that a quota system is good for them, but what kind of jobs should we provide quotas for? Well, if we provide quotas for the basic positions, would that mean that we have completed our work? Many students hope that when they join the government, they would have the same career ladder as able-bodied persons, and so that would depend on their performance and their potential. Therefore, they must meet our requirements at the recruitment process to do that. And in our recruitment process, we assess the ability of each applicant. The PWDs would enjoy some preferential treatment, but not all, because we do need to look at the expertise needed for the positions. We encourage the BDs to provide an ideal environment for the PWDs and to provide and to accommodate their needs so that the PWDs will be able to give a good performance, and the BDs would also explore the potential of the PWDs. The PWDs may be very talented or have expertise in certain areas. Let's say a PWD works at a call center, and for the efficiency unit, we do employ many visually impaired persons to work there. And at the CED and the EMSD, we also understand that there is a lot of communication between the clients and the department. Therefore, we do try to hire more PWDs to work at these call centers. Well, chairman would actually provide more resources to the BDs to recruit more PWDs, even though it is not a quota system. So you're not only just providing equipment or accommodation for them in their work environment. So are you talking, so what do you mean by that? Well, let's say we do not count them as civil servants. If we hire them as non-civil servants, would that actually be encouraging them to recruit more? Well, we have to see whether we're really assisting them or to providing them with certain welfare. They are two different concepts. There are many different categories of PWDs. I've met with many students with disabilities. They are university students. They don't want welfare. They don't want to receive welfare from us. They want an equal opportunity. So what they hope is to prove themselves through an opportunity. And so this internship scheme is very important. We're not talking about very large resources. I'm sure that after we continue with the scheme for a few more years, we'll be able to give you a better picture of the job career of these students. Well, you each get 5 minutes, so please do not ask any more questions after your allocated 5 minutes. Dr. Ann Chang. Thank you, Chairman. I want to follow up on Mr. Ho's question. You do not agree with a set quota for PWDs, but actually there are huge benefits with a quota system. Look at some Western countries. Ever since they set a quota system, the government hired more PWDs. Even the private sector hired PWDs to show their strong corporate governance. And ever since that was commenced, more PWDs were recruited, and so the PWDs could get more job opportunities. Well, if students graduate from the same university, a person with disability compared to an able-bodied person might not get the same opportunity. The secretary said then both would be assessed on equal footing. But I want to ask, in the past few years, have you ever received any complaints or PWDs tell you that they do not get equal opportunities? Has anyone ever lodged such a complaint with you? Well, honestly speaking, yes, there have been complaints from PWDs and also complaints from concerned groups of PWDs. On the other hand, however, we have also received complaints on preferential treatment because able-bodied persons felt that they did not get an equal opportunity. Well, I'm not trying to be partial to any side, but I do have to tell you that yes, complaints are received from both sides. Well, don't sigh, Dr. Chang. This is the reality. I have received both kinds of complaints. So just don't look at this from only one side. The quota system is a simple method that seems to solve the problem. But if we are really adopting a quota system, that means it is mandatory, and that means the BDs must hire enough PWDs. Are there enough positions at the BDs to hire PWDs? What if there are not? Well, they may, if they don't find appropriate persons, then they would just put the PWD at just at any position. I received a complaint that a PWD lodged a complaint for not receiving equal opportunity because he felt that he was not able to prove himself to go up the career ladder. But we have considered the physical condition of this person, and therefore there are limitations to his positions. So can a quota system really help all PWDs? I do agree, Chairman, that some PWDs would need some kind of welfare, but not all. So we do have to look at this through different layers. What we are hoping to do right now is to help those who are capable but not able to find a suitable job. We hope that they would be able to climb up the career ladder on equal footing.
Chairman, I have one more point. Secretary, what you said is right. But that doesn't mean that we are in the wrong. We are just suggesting that in the future, well, I don't know whether you will stay in your position, Secretary. I don't know much about the rumors out there, but in any case, you are in that position today, so you please ask the relevant civil servants to consider more this system. I have not been in touch with a lot of PWDs, but I do know of certain unfairness. So 2 suggestions from me. First, the government must set up a very good and clear system. And also there should be good policies to encourage private sector organizations to take on PWDs. I'm sure that if there is a will, there is a way. I believe the Secretary has heard you. I'll draw a line here. The last one is Dr. Leung Kwok-hong and Dr. Fernando Zhang's second round. Is there any other member who wishes to speak for a second time? So I'll give Dr. Zheng 3 minutes and Mr. Leung Kwok-hong first. First, the government has been swaying its policies on a long time. 13-14, that was a peak time. The new PWD recruits, 0.95%. Why? Well, very high ratio. Because in November 2012, Dr. Fernando Zheng organized this meeting in the Polytechnic University. And Mr. Lam Wun-kwong, the then chair of the EOC, made a strong appeal at that hearing. And he said that 7% of the EOC employees were PWDs, and the government must put in a policy to encourage private sector organizations to hire more PWDs, and that worked. I don't know where Clement Zheng was at that time. And Leung Chen-ying, according to reports, Dr. Zheng approached him 3 times, and C.Y. Leung refused to meet him. And Dr. N. Zheng is not up to par. I found the table and the statistics very strange, because Lam Wun-kwok said something and that worked, and that was response. So that's number 1. Number 2, I think the debate today is superfluous. You have 3 people, Zheng, Chao, and Mac. Mac, Chao, Zheng. Well, in Chinese, it means that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do a lot. So that's what you are doing. The issue is very simple. If you recruit people into the government, well, the number is lagging behind those who are leaving. There are maybe 100 reasons why people leave the government. That's okay. But then people join without any physical disability, but then when they leave, they have developed disability. There have been so many such cases, especially for the clerical assistant, the aunties and so on. They have developed tennis elbow and so on, and they leave. And they take you to court, but they lose their cases. So how do you protect your employees? So, Chairman, I think we should appoint Mr. Clement Zheng to be the chairperson of the EOC. And we can also appoint Dr. Fernando Zheng as a chairperson. And also we can appoint Dr. N. Zheng, because she makes strong requests all the time, and she speaks in a loud voice. Well, the government is like that. You should kick them, or else they won't do anything. Now, if you assume the post of the chair of the EOC, they may have, say, 15% of the employees being PWDs. So a strong EOC chairman can get things done. They have 7% of their employees being PWDs. So I think government policies matter a lot. So Mr. Zheng, well, you will be leaving the government soon. So please apply for this EOC chair post as soon as you can. Try to get things smoothing. Lam Wun-kwong was capable. His remarks have triggered good response. But then after Lam Wun-kwong left and he joined the EXCO, then the number or the ratio has dropped. So I think the EOC should do more. We just can't depend on the government. And I hope that the Dr. N. Zheng can serve as the chair of the EOC and make requests on the government instead of criticizing the NGOs and government here. Well, I'm finished. If Xi Jinping is coming to Hong Kong, then that's not desirable. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong will just leave 30 seconds to the secretary to respond. So I will be replying on behalf of all the 3 of us here. I have been very careful in listening to what Mr. Leung has to say. Well, 13-14, the number has gone up from 30 to 80. And then after the Lam Wun-kwong effect, well, the number has dropped to 58, but this year we have 83. Well, but this year we have Dr. N. Zheng and Dr. Fernando Zheng saying something. Well, let's deal with this in all seriousness. The issue is not that straightforward, I would say. If you go by the statistics over the years, maybe Dr. Fernando Zhang's point was right. The number has been stable, but it's not desirable. There has not been a marked increase in the number. So that's why I emphasize that we must make breakthroughs. And if we do it by the way of a quota system, then that's going to be risky, because there will have a labeling effect, and those with the capability will even be more subject to unnecessary treatment. Or, well, we would set an example ourselves. I hope that in recruiting for general grades, we would do more, because we are employing a large number of people the year before the last. For CA and ACO grades, we have employed 2,600 people. So that's quite a number, I would say. We want to lead by example. That's number one. Number two, we want to expand the internship scheme, not just within the government. Well, last year we took on 43 students, and this year we are taking over around 60 students. We are employing 83 new recruits with disabilities. So 60 is quite a high ratio already. And some of the graduates may join the civil servants afterwards. We would like to expand the scheme to cover public bodies and also private sector organizations. If they really do this, I believe there will be a lot more job opportunities for the scheme participants. We're not talking about a quota. It's really for actually the graduates to try to go through the test and get the job. As a next step, we would be looking at the recruitment situation. We are already doing it, and we want to do more with general grades. And we also want to expand the scheme to organizations outside of the government. That should be, we hope that to have better response. Dr. Zhang, 3 minutes. We've been talking about the quota system for 2 decades, and we're not going to say anything more because you've been categorical in saying not to do it. Now, you said that you would go by the performance-based or effective-based approach. You said that you would expand the internship scheme to NGOs and even private sector organizations. NGOs are subvented by you, and then you said you would talk to the LWB. According to your paper, in the past 5 years, LWB just hired 1 PWD. It was one of the worst departments in that sense. I don't know what kind of an attitude does the LW have. So can you tell me what is your discussion with your LWB, and how is the progress of the discussion? When will these be implemented in NGOs, and what about the number of placements? Chairman, I can't make too many promises here, but we should at least try whether we will succeed or not ultimately, and I think we have succeeded in our scheme. All of the students, except 1 or 2 who are complaining there wasn't enough work, well, they have been giving us very good response. And so we are in a position to say that the scheme can be further expanded. I have had informal dialogue with the NGOs, and they said they can consider implementing the scheme. I haven't had any concrete discussions with the LWB yet, but the LWB has actually participated in the internship scheme. I hope that our discussions can go smoothly with the LWB, and I hope that you can give us more support when we try to implement the expanded scheme in the future. If our effectiveness of the scheme is anything to go by, then I really don't see any major obstacles in implementing and expanding the scheme. The Secretary, you don't have much time left in your office. You still haven't have concrete discussions with the LWB. I'm very worried. You, in paragraph 10, you said that you would actively explore the matter, but then it doesn't seem that you are being very active. I'm quite worried. Please draw up a timetable. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, try to agree on a timetable with the LWB and also give us a paper on that later on. Dr. Zhang. Among the 32 university students, 5 have joined the LWB and the Labor Department in that program. So they have fully participated in the program. Well, as long as we can make a start and things can go on, right? We can give you a supplementary paper later to update you on the progress of our expansion plan and how the arrangement is going to be like. It's just 1 year between the last scheme and the latest scheme. We just finished the preparation work together with the Shine Skills Center for the program to be launched in October. So the scheme has been launched, but we haven't got a lot of experience yet. Thank you. Now, based on members' discussions, just now the government has now 3,000 odd civil servants with a disability, taking up the 2% of the civil service. We're not arguing about the quota system anymore, and members are concerned about the changes in the future. And many members have asked, can priority be given to PWDs? Of course, their intention is good. They want more job opportunities for PWDs, but then the government stance is very clear, and that the PWDs will not be given preferential treatment in a way. But then how can we make sure that they are not subject to discrimination? And that is, if they come with the same conditions, they are given equal opportunities in the competition for the job. And the administration has their own stance. And what we are most concerned is that for those PWDs who are eligible, who have achieved a certain level of competency, these will not be allowed to join. So that should not happen. I think that's very clear. There's no absolute preference in a way, but there is relative preference being given to applicants. And also through this internship scheme, we would try to identify certain job types in which the PWDs can fully exploit their potential, so that departments can employ PWDs in these jobs. And I think this is very important. Thank you, Secretary. I understand. Well, the example you cited is a good one.
Well, I think the administration heard our views. I'm sure that the new administration will follow up. Next agenda item 5, 2017 to 2018 Civil Service Pay Adjustment Paper. Well, all electrical paper CSBCR/PG/4-5-001/78 and prepared by the Electrical Secretariat CSBCR/PG/4-085/001/78 and paper CB bracket 4/1215/16 to 17 bracket 05. Well, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest with the item, please declare interest before you speak. So I would now like to invite the Secretary to brief on the paper. Well, thank you. We have prepared 2 papers for you. and we have considered other views on the civil service pay adjustment. I have used this paper to provide some supplement. On June 13th, a decision has been made that for pay increase of 1.88% for the upper salary band and a pay increase of 2.94% for the middle salary band. And so this will be effective April 1st of this year. And so on para 1, 10, and 18 to 20, there are some more details. 1.88% and 2.94% equals to an increase of is just equals to the net pay trend indicator for the upper salary band plus 0.5%, and this is made after considering all the elements. First is the PTI in para 6 to 8. So it's one. So you can see that the net PTI stated, and then for 8.43% inflation, and then the third is the cost of living. So you can see in para 11 and 12 last year the CPI raised 1.8%, and fourthly, the government's fiscal position, as stated in paragraphs 13 and 14, we have a consolidated surplus 110.8 billion, and it is estimated to be 16.3 billion in 2017 to 18. And we have also shown the pay claims of the staff sides in para 15 and 16. And then we have looked at a staff side requested pay rise of 4.72%, and the HKCC SA requested 3.3% pay rise. In the past, before we come up with a decision on the pay adjustment, I have met with the councils, including the PFC and the DSCC, and the other four are cross-disciplinary representatives, and we have listened to their views and we have collated their views into our consideration. This year, the decision of pay adjustment with a 0.5% increase of the net PTI, and having the lower salary band pay increase to be the same of middle salary band. It is in accordance with our past practice, and each year the chief executive will look into the individual circumstances of each year to come up with the pay adjustment. I think you should look into the economic implication. In paragraphs 25 and 26, we have said that there would be a dent in the public in the treasury. We're talking about 260 million, and if we consider all these with the other staff subvented organizations and auxiliaries, we're talking about 5.4 billion. So with the support of members, we are going to submit this item to the Finance Committee as soon as possible. If the FC can approve this item before the end of this term, then we would be able to start with a new pay in July, and then to extend our subsidies to schools, welfare organizations, universities, and other organizations. So this is my sharing for now. I welcome members' questions. We have Mr. Poon Siu Ping, Mr. Lam Chok Ting, Mr. Ho Kai Ming, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, and Dr. Fernando Tang waiting to speak. 5 minutes, including question and answers. Mr. Poon Siu Ping, please. Thank you, Chairman. So the extra 0.5%, if you look at the different councils, it seems that they're all disappointed because the most conservative request was a pay rise of 3%, and so there is still a small discrepancy. In the past, the chief executive and the executive council will also consider the government financial situation and inflation and cost of living, etc. This 0.5% has been questioned by many of how you came up with this number. Well, you said this is a one-off, but how did you come up with this number? Why is it across the board? Because for the different salary band employees, there should be a different percentage of increase. Maybe I think you should consider giving a higher percentage for those in the lower salary band. I hope you can explain to me why you came up with this figure. Some civil servants have already reached the maximum of their pay scale. I want to ask how many civil servants have actually reached the maximum of their pay scale. And would you also consider deducting PCIs, because some civil servants have also raised this point. Well, there are many questions. Let me answer these one by one. Well, it's very hard to please all, Mr. Poon. Well, we have considered requests on the staff side, but we cannot really control or maybe adhere to all the requests, because each council has a different request. Some look at a 4.2%, and some said that there should be inflation plus an extra percentage to boost morale, and some said that it should be there should be a PTI standard, so it should be 4.5% across the board. So we cannot really please all. It is very difficult to do so. Mr. Poon, those in the upper salary band are more disappointed than others. But many have said that this shows that the mechanism is really effective. I reviewed the discussion made 2 years ago. We have not destroyed the mechanism. Our mechanism is based on 6 main circumstances. This is our mechanism. If we do not consider all these elements before coming up with a decision, that means that we are not following the mechanism. Well, for the for the net PTI, that is not something that we can control. If you look at it from a different perspective, the fiscal position, economic implication, all play a huge role, because if the economy is not doing well, that would also affect our decision. So the mechanism requires us to consider all elements before coming up with a decision. I hope that you understand that there is no set formula. May I continue, Chairman? We don't know how these factors or these relevant factors would work each year, and we are not able to quantify some of the factors on any individual year, and there is no consistent view from all the associations. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lam Chak-ting. Thank you, Chairman. Well, you do have relevant factors to consider in the established mechanism. One is the state of Hong Kong's economy, the government's fiscal position, etc. You also need to consider the pay claims of the staff sides and the civil service morale. We have seen that in the past year, there is a huge surplus in the government. There is actually surplus was 92.8 billion. And we see the requests from the staff side compared to your decision. They request 3.8% to 4.5%, and yours is 1.88% to 2.94%. So that's actually a 50% discrepancy. Well, under these circumstances, you worried that this pay adjustment will affect staff morale, because you can see that many civil servants are retiring with pension, and the private sector organizations would also try to lure the middle salary band civil servants into their organization. So are you afraid that there would be a large turnover? Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lam, no matter how much pay adjustment we suggest each year, the staff ask for more. So this is a very natural negotiation phenomena. I don't think that in my term here I have ever seen us paying more than their request. Those in the upper salary band have stronger views. They think that 1.88% is a very huge gap from their request. But in paragraph 11, I can also answer your question, Mr. Poon, with this answer that the consumer price index 1.8% with CPIA to be 2.1%. Mr. Poon asked about the civil servants in the lower salary band. Their pay adjustment is already higher than CPIA. Therefore, you can see that for this time we have given the extra 0.5% to all the different salary bands.
So there is nothing unjust or unfair to the upper salary band staff. Will more people leave because of the lower staff morale? I don't think we can increase or boost the staff morale by just giving a bit more. I think what we need to do is that, well, according to my communication with the staff unions, their view is that the mechanism should be able to reflect their requests. So, and that is the adjustment should not just focus on the net PTIs, but other aspects as well. And the government is willing to add an extra 0.5% on top of the net PTIs. And this gives them the feeling that the government really appreciates the work pressure that they're under. And we should not be looking at this, Mr. Lam. We talk about manpower shortage. Can we provide more support to them? Is also important. So we should have more staff to help them out to ease their work pressure. Now you're talking about the lower salary band. You are giving them just an extra 1% or more to them, and I think the government should do this. And in the next few years, you should also do the same, because those at the lower salary band are subject to more influence by the rising commodity prices, and that situation is very different from the senior civil servants. So I hope that you can adopt the same arrangement. Try to give more to the junior officers. Mr. Ho, the staff morale of the low junior officers is dealt a blow. There are other people who are unhappy, those who have reached a maximum pay scale, because they have reached their maximum pay scale and they can't have PCIs. So has the administration considered that situation? Can you be fairer to them? And also, can you consider providing certain buffer for them so that they can still get a bit more pay increase? And also for NCSE staff, they are actually taking on the same jobs as civil servants, but they are not covered under the civil service pay adjustment mechanism. Can the administration consider next time whether the NCSC should be given the same pay rise as that for civil servants? Now, if this goes on a long time, there will be unequal pay for equal work. Well, not to mention for outsourced work. These workers are not benefiting from the pay adjustment mechanism this time. Say, for example, the outsourced workers of FEHC, that they don't get a pay rise, and they're working long hours, and they are in fact suffering from a pay cut. I know that this doesn't come under your portfolio, but then NCSE staff do come under your work portfolio as well. So what are you going to do to those who have reached maximum pay scale and also NCSE staff? Mr. Ho, there have been so many requests in the community suggesting that we should abolish deducting the PCIs, and then we should just use the gross PTI as a benchmark. I can't agree with that, and this is also very risky, and this is undermining the mechanism. The deduction of PCIs is part of the mechanism, just like the other factors in the mechanism. The deduction of the PCIs over the years has seen changes through their own cycle. So if the PCIs don't work to our advantage, then we should do away with it. That should not be the case. We should actually allow for flexibility in the mechanism. Say, if they're for a particular sector, for a particular factor, like the PCIs, when there is a cyclical increase or reduction, then we do have the flexibility on the other factors to make adjustments. Now, some civil servants have told me that this time, actually, the mechanism really takes on board the 6 factors, and this is very important. And Mr. Ho said that some staff are very disappointed. Well, let me give you another angle to the whole thing. Now, some staff members have already benefited from a number of PCIs, and their pay is much higher than those the new recruits. So for a staff officer who hasn't reached the maximum pay scale, he can have 2 increments in a year. But is this person, or is the staff who is on maximum pay scale is necessarily worse off than those who haven't reached a maximum pay scale? Because they are already enjoying the maximum scale, so they shouldn't be worse off. Chairman, if we have to take into account the in-scale increment of the merit pay in private sector, we should, by the same logic, deduct the PCIs in the civil service. And actually, those who have reached a maximum pay scale have already fully enjoyed the relevant benefits in the past. So is this something fair or not fair? Honestly, I think it's a matter of opinion. I appreciate their feelings, but I don't fully agree with their requests. Second, Mr. Ho referred to NCSC staff. Chairman, I have been the Postmaster General myself, and I fully understand this. For NCSC staff, they are not following the pay adjustment mechanism of civil servants, and based on the market conditions, their pay adjustment can be done at any time. So let me cite an example. For example, for the operating funds like the EMSDs and also the Hong Kong Post, because they are financially independent, so they can effect the pay adjustment anytime. Now, actually, even when we were experiencing the filibustering here at Electrical, where some of the departments could adjust the pay for the NCSC staff without waiting for approval of funding from the FC. And maybe if there is too long a time gap in the adjustment mechanism of the two, we can consider putting in place a special arrangement so that the NCSC staff do not have to suffer because of the time gap. Well, in the interest of time, does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll draw a line here. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, Fernando Cheung, and myself. And Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. The government is the largest employer, so whatever it does will definitely affect the labor market and the pay therein. So from this perspective, you may employ NCSC staff, and also you are subsidizing certain organizations. So that pay scale will follow the government's sort of pay adjustment for civil servants. Now the economy is in a boom now, and say if you have a surplus also. If you are a private sector organization, then you will also have consideration on the pay claims of the staff size and civil service morale. The staff size asks for 3 to 4.72%. You're now offering 1.88 to 2.94%. That's a far cry. Would you make a compromise? And you said that, of course, the staff side will make a tall order all the time. And they're not like other workers. They would not resort to strikes and other industrial action. I'll tell you here now. You are outsourcing the jobs with low skills to NCSC staff and outsourced workers. And so they are affected. So you have to increase the pay for these two groups of people so that these workers are happy. And also, because you are increasing the pay for these two groups of people, the pay in the entire labor market will rise as a result. We have a some $3 trillion of reserve and $1 trillion of surplus this year. You should consider ways of making amends to this distorted market. If you have not used, say, outsourced workers, NCSC workers, and agency workers to take up your jobs, then this would not happen. You tell me that we're just civil servants when we not have regard to other aspects. But you should have communicated with the LWB. 0.539. That has to do with the remuneration. You said that it has just not to do with the pay, but also the work conditions as well, work environment. And you said that the workers are working too hard, and even if you give them a pay rise, that won't help resolve the problem. Now, if you give them a better pay, well, that would be a form of compensation to them. They would be happier. Now, given our economic situation, our financial position, would the government first try to remedy the distorted market here, and so that people who suffer from a very low pay could be given more? You should save them first. Those who are under the median income, so you should help them first. This is a kind of anti-cyclical measure. Well, if the economy is on the downward side, you launch anti-cyclical measures, but you are not doing the same in the labor market. Now you have a huge surplus, and you are not paying them back, compensating them who have suffered for you in your worst times. So what kind of a policy is that? Well, if your husband says that he's rich and his eyes set on another woman, then that's not good. Well, I know that you will leave your office very soon, but I think your rationale is flawed, totally flawed. You can respond to me, but you can choose not to respond. I've done my best to speak my mind. I'm not going to refute him. I think I'll just set out my stance. Mr. Leung, we're not a private sector organization. Well, you are trying to privatize certain tasks, right? Well, the money doesn't belong to us, right? It's Hong Kong people's money. As I said, the pay rise that we're suggesting involves $5.5 billion, and I think it's money worth spending. And if we don't make this additional 0.5%, we will be saving up $1 billion. Mr. Leung, you have reminded me time and again that we should do more to help old ladies with dental problems. Dr. Zhang has done a lot on that side, and all this needs money as well. And I don't agree that, well, since we've got a huge surplus, we should fork out money recklessly. No, that should not be the case. We should not be forking out money here in this regard. I believe that other members would agree with my position. Second point, about whether we are actually influencing or leading the market. Chairman, we have to be very clear about this. We are not leading the market in a way. How can we do that? If we do that, then we will make projections for the next year, and we will lead the others and effect the pay increase. No, we are just following the market. So that's why there is a time lag, as some members pointed out.
We are now looking at the term from April of last year to this year of March. So we're looking at the trends based on last year. So how can we lead the market? I agree with Mr. Leung that we do have contract staff, we have non-contract staff. We have the responsibility to make sure that their pay adjustment is not too worse off. So we hope that for the NCSC staff, their pay adjustment would not be too far off from civil servants. In the past 1 or 2 years, for NCSC staff, on contract, their pay adjustment is mainly the same as civil servants. Mr. Leung said that we are talking rubbish, but we are not. Let's say a person gets $10,000 per month, even though with a pay rise you're only talking about a $100 extra $300 per month, so that's $10 extra per day. That's not a lot, but that would still be helpful. So this is my view on what Mr. Leung's opinion. Thank you. Dr. Fernando Cheung. The civil service pay adjustment impacts the whole labor market and also has an impact on subsidized organizations and electrical members. So I'm not sure whether we should declare interest as well. Well, the pay increase is a new low in recent years, so we have heard many views. And there's an extra percentage to the net pay trend indicator, and that is rare. I'm afraid that if we continue to use the net PTI to guide the civil service pay adjustment, because the net pay trend indicator relies on PTS, which is based on the private market. And you can see that there is a huge widening gap between the rich and poor, as stated by Mr. Leung on his view on the Gini coefficient. Oh, I am worried about this because the government, well, although you are not in the lead in affecting the market, there should still be some sort of difference between the private and public sector. I am not objecting to the extra 0.5%. I am in agreement with this increase. I think that the government should take the lead in reducing the gap between the rich and the poor. I am worried in the future that you are just going to follow the net PTI, and that will have a huge impact on those in the lower salary band. Of course, those in the upper salary band would complain because they would think they would be better off in the private market. But it's very hard to compare because civil servants have very steady jobs, and there are many benefits in supplement to the salary. Therefore, I think for future pay adjustment, you really should take this into consideration. The 6 relevant factors are very broad. Basically, the whole pay adjustment could be a political decision. I'm just afraid that your future political decision would incline towards the market trend, and that would widen the gap between the rich and the poor. It has happened before, especially last year we discussed the pay increase of directorate grades. And so you can see that there is a larger and larger gap between the upper and lower salary band. Well, Secretary, I know that your term ends next month, but you really should take into consideration that the net PTI is not a good indicator, because what you are doing will just be widening the gap between the rich and poor. How can you reverse the situation or to avoid widening this gap? Secretary, thank you, Dr. Cheung, for your support on our concept. I want to reassure members that the gap between the rich and poor will not aggravate, because we do monitor the situation. In the past, for grades D8 and above, and for the and for one scale and the junior staff, you can see that what they are receiving, if you compare the number at April 1st, we're talking about 280,000 and a difference of, and then 15,000. So this was basically the same with 2007. Every 6 years, we would conduct a survey because, as you know, there are different percentages in the salary band, and therefore we would focus on 5 different bands, and then to look into the pay level, and then to see how much the difference is. In 2013, we did a pay survey, and you can see that we are only slightly lower than that of the private market in 4 sectors, and 1 are higher than the private market. And there is actually a difference of 8.8% in one of the upper salary band, and therefore we have requested EXCO to add in an extra 3.3% for them. So you can see that basically there it is similar in the private and public sector, and the next pay level survey would be done in 2018, and we would try to make an adjustment then if there is huge discrepancy. So whether it be civil servants in the upper salary band or in the lower salary band, we would also conduct the survey. We cannot force private companies to give us figures. Therefore, we do encourage those that are quite representative in the market and those with strong corporate governance to provide us with data. Well, it cannot be 100% sure, but we do try to compare the figures, and if we have doubts, then we would ask the companies to provide proof or to explain to us why the discrepancy. But this is all done on a voluntary basis. We cannot force the companies to provide us with any data. Chairman, I hope that you would set a cap that it should not include, that it should be higher than 20%. So this is something what Cameron has committed to in Britain. The maximum gap should not be higher than 20%. So D8 grade compared to the lowest salary grade should not be higher difference than 20%. Well, it's my turn now. In the past few years, the administration only looked at the net PTI as the basis, and therefore the public has the misunderstanding that the net PTI equals the mechanism. I heard many radio stations talk about the effect of the net PTI, but actually there are still 5 other factors other than the net PTI. So I do think that you need to clarify this to the public. Another member asked a question of how you can make adjustment putting aside all these 6 factors. It seems it's very hard to explain it. How do you explain the morale? Of course, everybody wants to have high morale in the workplace because employees will be more efficient in their work. But I actually don't understand. I don't interpret it like this. I think that morale should also represent, the whole team of civil servants, because the civil servants, when they are closer to requirement, may be attracted by jobs in the public sector, and it seems that there is a lot of turnover at that stage, and my interpretation of morale would be this kind of morale. What is your interpretation of civil service morale? That is my first question. Secondly, in relation to the deducting the PCIs, I see from the paper that the whole indicator should be the net pay and the extra allowance, but it seems that the supplement additional pay indicator, we're talking about bonuses, etc. How come there is a negative number? Because your pay wouldn't be deducted even with poor performance. So how can you explain the negative number of the additional pay indicator? And actually it affects the basic pay indicator. So I want to ask how you read these figures. And thirdly, as the chairman of this panel, I must say that we have received 5 papers from the few staff side, the SCSC, Hong Kong Chinese Civil Service Association, Hong Kong Senior Government Officers Association, PFC, DSCC, and MOD1 Council, and they wish to see a higher percentage. Well, they submitted their request at an early stage, and now and maybe you have already set aside a request, but perhaps you could first respond to my other questions. For the additional pay indicator, which you asked about, there has been some changes in the private market. The additional pay indicator includes bonuses or the 13th month salary. I understand, but if you don't pay this out, then it would be 0. Why would it be negative? Well, if last year you got 13 months paid and this year you got 12 months only, then that means there is a positive. So that means it would bring a negative number. So next say last year we paid out a 13 month pay, but this year we only paid 12 months. So there is a 1 month difference, and that would lead to a negative number. Look at the reduction in the upper and middle salary band. It is higher than the lower salary band. So you can see that the structure of the upper and middle salary band tends more towards we're talking about the non-fixed pay. So that's at 4.18% and is 4.68%. So and for the in-scale increment, well, I understand your question on this.
I said last year for the PCIs, well, let me say this clearly again. There is a cycle to it. Over the years, the PCIs, well, the reduction ratio has been high because there are fewer and fewer colleagues who have reached the maximum pay scale. Let me extend the meeting time by 50 minutes. So it means that more and more civil servants, after the pay adjustment mechanism, will have an additional increment point. Now, for the entire civil service, 7 years ago, those who have reached the maximum pay scale take up 68% of the entire force. Today is 48%. So this goes to show two things. In the 80s, we employed a large number of civil servants, so that we are seeking a peak of retirement here recently, and many more new people joined. And in starting in early 2000, because of economic reasons, we have substantially cut the number of civil servants, and we've for 6 years in a row we haven't recruited any new people. So that's why there will be an increase in the number of people who will be subject to deduction of PCIs. Now, after we've reached the peak retirement period, and when the age of the civil servants becomes stabilized, the number will decrease. So we should not say cancel the deduction of PCIs. Now, if we are to do that in the gross PTI, we should also deduct the in-scale increment and merit pay. But then, what if it drops in the future? Are we going to put it back? So we have to be very careful about this. Now, you talk about staff morale. What I'm worried about is whether the colleagues are proactive in their work rather than having a stable civil servants. Very often, it all boils down to whether the colleagues are willing to take an extra step. Now, for departments which have a high staff morale, they usually deal with things more flexibly and effectively. There is bound to be some wastage rate, but I'm particularly concerned about the wastage of middle salary band staff, because it will affect us most. Now, we're reaching the peak of retirement in these few years. Sometimes we have to ask a certain people to stay, even they've reached their retirement age. And if the middle ranking people cannot take on the work of the upper salary band, then that's no good. So we have to be. We'll take all these into account in our future pay adjustment arrangements. Thank you, Secretary. Yes, the clerk has reminded me that I should say something. Members, after the discussion of this item, it will have to be submitted to the FC for approval of the relevant funding. So, members, do we agree that this item be submitted to the FC for approval of funding? Any objection? No objection? Okay, thank you very much. Lastly, this is the last time that Mr. Clement Cheung will attend this meeting in this term of government, and I would like to thank the Secretary and your team for your hard work, for answering our very poignant questions. And some of the questions are difficult to answer, but you have responded in any case. I can't say that all your answers are satisfactory, but anyway, once again, thank you, Mr. Clement Cheung, and I hope that, all the best for your life ahead. Well, on behalf of the three of us here, I would like to thank you for your accommodation, and I hope that for the works that we should take forward, please provide the support to us. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.